Hello, Wraiths and Warriors. My name is TBSkyn, and well, I guess I can't accuse Riot of not feeding me content because, hey, second animated short to take a look at, and probably I should also do a discussion video talking a little bit about lore theories for where the heck Riot is even going with all of this nonsense. But yeah, last time we took a look at the happy-go-lucky Yordle adventures in Bilgewater, where everyone had fun and everything was cute and nobody got hurt. But today, we're looking at Ruination, a short where nobody has any fun, everything goes terribly bad, and a lot of people get really badly hurt. So, Necrit has a full breakdown of like all of the lore stuff that goes into this particular short and all of the stuff that it's teasing. So if you want to know about the Redeemed story and the many little teasers that Riot has planted, leading up to this particular short, I recommend his video. For our purposes, we're going to be talking about the filmmaking and the animation, primarily. And it's worth starting with the point of this cinematic from a storytelling perspective. The point of it is, well, you're looking at it right now. It's introducing the Ruined King as a major villain in an upcoming storyline that's probably going to, like, be the main driver of a lot of what's going to be happening in the story for Season 11. At least that's what Riot is teasing, given that the Ruined King's crown is quite literally the icon for this season. The point of this short is to establish him as a villain, to show us what it is that he wants, what he's willing to do in order to get it, and what the consequences might be if he gets what he wants, which is what's about to happen right now. We get the full calling forth of a ruination all across Runeterra, from the Immortal Bastion to Ionia, to Demacia. Basically, like, major regions all being threatened by this rising scourge of undeath. So this is like, if the Ruined King wins, this is what's going to happen, and then we get the introduction to the heroes that will stand against the coming tide of darkness, specifically Poppy, who looks fucking amazing in this thing, Darius, Samira, Karma, and, well, notably absent are the people of Bilgewater. It would have been, might imagine that you'd get to see the heroes of the Ruined King game show up here as well, but that seems to be kept a little bit separate here, because we had Vayne and Poppy representing Demacia, but nothing from Bilgewater, nothing from Shurima or Ishtal or Targon. So make of that what you will. Maybe that could just be a thing for time where they didn't want to go to every single goddamn region. We also get an introduction to the Ruined King's perhaps most terrifying power, certainly the one that forms the basis of his gameplay pattern, which is his ability to mind control others, which is something that almost works on Karma, and certainly works on Darius, and depending on just how lore canon the ruined skins that we're getting are, might also work on Draven and Shyvana. Who really knows? It's tough to say how canon that's ever going to really be, but it's certainly interesting, at the very least. And that's the point of this short, is like, here's the Ruined King, here's what he can do, here's what happens if he wins, now let's go and fight against him. Contained within that, we also get some storytelling for Lucian and Senna specifically. For example, we get this moment right here, where Lucian demonstrates pretty clearly, when it comes to a choice between attacking the villain who is going to end the world and saving his wife, Lucian chooses his wife every single time. That is his weakness as a character. That's been an ongoing storyline for him, is that he's willing to sacrifice literally anything that it might take in order to keep Senna safe, which is something that he and her are working on emotionally as a couple, because Senna, on the other hand, is a lot more concerned with actually saving the world, you know? So let's actually have a look at the animation in this thing. And, well, using the Yordle short as a point of comparison, there is a very different visual style on display here. And actually, I forgot to look up who the animation studio is for this one. So, hey, TBSkyn, could you just, like, check it out and put it on text in the screen, and maybe also show us some of the other work that animation studio has done, because this is some damn high quality work. But from a visual storytelling perspective, this is different in a number of interesting ways. For example, the Tales of Runeterra shorts usually rely on painted backgrounds. That is to say, they'll have a digital artist paint digital backgrounds, and then characters will be acting, like they'll insert 3D characters into 2D images, essentially, and have the 2D images function as a background. This is a very different thing, because these backgrounds are, all of them, as far as I can tell at least, like, they could be very well-disguised matte paintings, but as far as I can tell, all of these backgrounds are fully 3D rendered. Let's see if I can find a shot of, like, the immortal bat. Yeah, here, for example, you can really see that this is a 3D environment that the characters are placed within, rather than the 2D environments of the Tales of Runeterra shorts. And that creates a much higher burden of labor. Like, it takes a lot more work and time just to render all these environments, to construct them, and to put them through the rendering process on the computer. Like, it's much more labor-intensive, and therefore it's a lot more just expensive in terms of the amount of budget that you'll need in order to create something like this. Not to suggest that doing it the way the Tales of Runeterra shorts does is, like, cheap or easy, because it's not. Animation never is. But certainly this is a more high-budget production from that perspective, and it gives us a little bit of a sense of how Riot wants us to understand these shorts. Because the Tales of Runeterra shorts, they are always rather low stakes. Like, they're not, like, these aren't grand world-spanning conflicts. It's like Heimerdinger and his apprentice have a thing stolen by Jinx, and then we have wacky hijinks as they try to get them back. Or it's Twisted Fate and Graves getting into a humorous altercation with Misfortune. Like, there's never really massive stakes here. It's just like people hanging out, mostly doing sort of Saturday morning cartoon adventures. This right here, on the other hand, be like part of the point of spending more money, part of the point of having the higher production values, of making everything look more fully realized, is to impart to the viewer the sense that, okay, shit's going down right here. Like, the stuff is getting serious. This is all getting very real. So let's actually look at the character animation at play here. Because, again, using the Tales of Runeterra short as a point of comparison, this is much more grounded, and I wouldn't say realistic necessarily, because there's a lot of stuff about this that is not realistic at all. But it's much more grounded animation, it's much more subtle, and something you'll notice, it's also a lot slower. If you look at the movements and behaviors of the characters in the Tales of Runeterra shorts, not just like the Yordles, but just in general the characters in those shorts, they tend to have a little bit more of that cartoon timing to their movements and behaviors. Comparatively, these characters move with weight. There is weight to every motion and action that they take. And that weight is key to the groundedness of the situation, but it's also key to just the mood of the character acting that's being done here. Let's take a look, for example, at these lovely fellas here. These charming gentlemen coming along here. Take a look at how this guy runs. This guy up front. Like, he's like a undead wisp of something created from the black mist. I mean, if it has a physical body, like, I'd almost be surprised. But look at how it has to move. As it stands up, you can see how it's like, you can see how its legs are being used to push its body weight up. And it's kind of loping forward, and it's running with this sort of hunched over gait, like it's almost sort of struggling to carry its own torso aloft, until it finally gets, like, within striking distance. So there's so much weight to how these characters are moving. They feel like if you felt them step on you, which some people in the comments are gonna make weirdly sexual, but, like, if this thing actually, like trod on you, it would feel like you had, like, a full body on top of you, in a way that it just doesn't with more cartoony aesthetics. And that's a very subtle little thing that animators can do when it comes to selling you, like, the mood and, like, the literal gravitas of a situation, is just make the characters move with more weight. We can see it in another subtle little gesture a little bit earlier on, if I can find the moment when Lucian takes the gun from Senna. So, pay attention to how Lucian's hand is moving here. You see that? You see that settling? Look, especially here in the thumb, as it comes down, like the way it settles, and you can see how the leather of his gloves deform, like as the weight of his hand settles down on his wife's. And you can also see that the weight of his hand is like gently pushing her hand downwards with the force of what he's doing. And the same thing comes when he actually takes the gun. Like, you can see when he's lifting his hand, there's this slow pull. And again, you can see the tension returning to the folds of his fingers. And he grabs the gun, And Senna lets go, and as she lets go, look what happens to the gun. It gets pulled downwards by its own gravity before Lucian, like, gets a hold and resists it again. So everything, not just the characters, but everything in the scene is moving with that sense of gravity, that sense of weight, which gives it the weight of reality. Which, of course, like, this is not a realistic human person, really, but because you have this weight of movement, you get a sense of realism from them. Like, you come away with a feeling of realism, and that's also aided by the way that they use lighting and texture. Look at the soft velvet texture of Senna's hood here. Like, that just looks like, oh, it looks like it'd be nice and smooth and, like, just sort of feel lovely and soft and warm against the skin, right? Look at the texture of her hair. Like, goddamn, Senna's hair looks amazing in this thing. Look at this, the woolly, curly texture of that hair. It's gorgeous. And again, that sense of reality. Look at the lighting in the rings that she's got braided into her hair. Like the bright orange highlight over here, like the colder edge light over on the other side, the brass color of most of it, sort of highlighted with these golden, and the little scuffs and scraps and marks, the little imperfections, all of this, like having that realistic aesthetic, even if like this is not like necessarily a realistic human, having that realistic aesthetic, again, sells the mood of the whole piece, which is that, oh, the stakes are real, these real people who can die. When someone gets hurt in this world, it's not like when Tristana or Timo or Graves gets hurt in the Yordle short, where it's just like, oh, that's cartoon, they just get hit on the head, they're fine, like there's no permanent trauma or anything. When a person gets hit in this aesthetic, it's like, oh, Jesus Christ, oh God, their ribs, like that's the feeling that you're supposed to get from it. And this is not like advanced super animation science or anything. This is just the basics of how you use an aesthetic to communicate like the feeling of the action, to communicate the stakes and the importance of what happens. And speaking of very basic filmmaking, here's a good way to show that these two characters are up against something that's much bigger than them. Pan the camera out, or zoom the camera out really, really far so that they're itty bitty little tiny things, like just barely present on the screen right here, and then show that the thing they're up against is this huge tidal wave coming in, like just dominating a whole side of the screen. That's a good way, again, to show what are the stakes of what's going on here. Well, it is two tiny little insignificant people standing against a force that is comparable to like a natural disaster, essentially. Again, all about selling the stakes. And I do like this transition that we go from the camera sort of being steady, staying outside of the mist, watching the two of them walk in. Then we get this wisp darting across the screen, and a smoke screen that then transitions us into, all of a sudden, the camera, rather than being static, like, so the camera goes from, like, holding still, which is what it does pretty much, yeah, from here, camera really doesn't move, like, it's very gently circling, like it's a drone shot or something. And then here, the camera is like very lightly tracking Senna and Lucian, but it stays still. Then once the smoke screen comes in, all of a sudden we have this sort of almost more handheld effect as the camera tracks towards the oncoming ghouls to give us a sense of the rapidness of their approach and the threat that they pose. And then by contrast, our two characters here, you see they have this little moment of communication where like Lucian looks at Senna, Senna twists her head around, and then Lucian knows what to do. So she pulls away the black mist that veils them, that protects them, because she has a limited amount of control over the black mist. And Lucian does what Lucian does best, which is blast undead creatures into absolute smithereens. Then again, after we see the two of them spring into action and be competent at something, little reminder that no, yeah, they're still tiny little insignificant humans battling against forces that are much bigger than them. Doing a competent job at it, you can see how Senna is essentially parting the waters of the mist. You can see how she's lighting the way, as Lucian says in the voiceover. But it's still like, okay, they have some resistance to it, but they're still overwhelmed. And I do like this shot of, we cut to this shot, the camera's tracking Senna because she's the important one in this scene, and Lucian is just sort of in the background, just basically simping for Senna as hard as Viego simps for Isolde a bit. Like, just protecting his queen, making sure that her approach to the actual villain of the piece is unobstructed. which is what we get here. Here we have the big bad villain, but again, notice that he's tiny little bitty in the screen. Like, right now, he's visually small in the screen, but take a look at the way that this image is posed. He's completely in the center of all of this, right? Like, the composition centers him. All of the mist, like the direction of the mist, flows from him forward, sort of like a wind at his back, and that combines with the fact that he's sitting casually on a thing that looks vaguely like a throne in the center. It gives you this sense of, okay, he's at the center of all of this. He's the eye of the storm. He's the source of this. He's the person who's controlling this. And now, finally, we get our first shot of the Ruined King. Notice the angle from which we are seeing him. Where is the horizon line from the perspective of the camera? It's somewhere... Well, I mean, Dinka K will appreciate this. It's somewhere level with his crotch. Pretty much, like, our eye line is, like, somewhere down around here. And we are looking up at him from below. And he's quite literally looking down at us from above. And that, again, in film language, is, like, the most basic possible and also one of the most effective ways that you can establish that this character has power in this scene. That he's dominant, that he has control, and that we are subject to that power and control, that we are vulnerable to him. Compare and contrast with if you had the camera angle like way from above, as though we are a giant peeking down at him. That's a very different feel. That's a very different emotion in the scene. And let's talk about the smoke tech, by the way. So smoke tech like this has been around in the animation industry for a good long while. To the best of my knowledge, it's partly a procedurally generated physics engine that handles making the smoke like look so liquid and look so flowing and have these very sort of beautiful, realistic billowings and behaviors. That's like partly procedurally generated, but animators and VFX artists and the director still do a lot of work in terms of making sure that like this thing just doesn't flow randomly, that it just doesn't flow away all over the scene. Remember how I talked about how the way that the smoke is flowing, like the way that the black mist is flowing from Viego here in the center, creating sort of this path, these visual lines that lead directly to him. That's the work of the directors and animators, like making sure that these like wisps of magic that flow out, that all the movement of the scene, that all this smoke movement is doing what they want it to in order to communicate what the scene is doing. That stuff doesn't happen by accident. You don't just tell the computer to make the smoke go and then just let it flow. There is customization here. And that's the thing I think sometimes people get wrong when it comes to stuff like motion capture and like procedurally generated animation. There's this folk myth that, oh, well, you just tell the computer to do the thing and you don't need, like, it's not people who do it, it's just the computer graphics technology is generating the thing automatically, and it really isn't. Like, there's still a hell of a lot of creative input that comes in from the animators, from the director, from the VFX artist, from the whole team. Like, it's a collaborative effort, it's a team effort to make something like this. To make the scene look correct. And if they hadn't been doing that, if they had just, like, grabbed a procedural generation smoke physics engine and said, okay, just smoke comes from here and it falls down, then this scene would just be a mess of just smoke absolutely everywhere. We wouldn't have this clear line of sight on Viego himself sitting in this outcrop that rises above the smoke clouds. There's always work, there's always creative choices going into showing you everything you see on screen. Like, and that's why something I repeat often in these animation breakdowns is that everything you see on screen, every movement, every twitch, every behavior, every little crinkle in the clothes, every bit of lighting, everything that happens here is a choice that someone had to think about and then make in order to make this thing look the way it does. Here's a good example. Take a look at the lighting on Senna in this scene. We have this green edge lighting coming from the side as though she's being lit up by one of the wisps that fly around. We have these shadows coming down on the left side of the face. That's a choice that someone makes. Someone makes decisions about, okay, where are the light sources in this scene? How are we going to render them on the character? Because again, oftentimes it's not as simple as just saying, let's tell the computer to make each one of these wisps a light source, and then just have them move, and then just let the light do whatever the hell it wants. Because that, again, can lead to complete visual chaos. That can lead to pandemonium, something that doesn't look good. And that wouldn't really give Senna this mood that she has here, which is one of confronting a powerful enemy with courage. you do not belong here. Like, she's literally not taking any of his shit. She's standing firm against him. And in order to communicate that feeling, you need a certain amount of visual stability on the character so that they don't look like they're losing control of the situation. Right now, Senna is in control of the situation. She's not, well, she's probably scared of him, because she's a sensible person, but she is acting with courage. So, we get a steadiness in the lighting of the character. Even though the scene is chaotic, the lighting on Senna is pretty steady, pretty consistent. And so she looks like this bastion of courage, like this bastion of strength, standing against like the absolute chaos that's happening behind her. Similarly, look at Viego here. Now, Senna, in the shot before, she's fully lit. Like, there's some shadows going on her, but she's fully lit. We can see all the details of her character. We can see the breastplate, we can see the cloak, we can see her colors, we can see everything. Then we cut to the Ruined King, and even though they're pretty much in the same environment, like there's not more than, 100 feet between them, Viego's lighting conditions are very, very different. In fact, let me zoom in on him a little bit. Once again, right to the crotch, because that's where the outline is. Take a look at how he's lit by comparison. He's sort of, like, first of all, his color scheme is already kind of drab. He's very pale. He's got, like, a black overcoat and, like, black leggings and black boots because he's a emo boy. So he's already kind of sort of black and white in that sense, but he's also, like, just devoid of color mostly in general. And even though he has light sources on him, he has this bright light coming from his chest, he has the light coming from his crown, the light coming from his ring, his face is mostly in shadow. Like, we barely get to see, like, what he even looks like at this point. He's, like, mostly in shadow. His body is mostly in shadow. And most of the, like, information we get about the shape of him comes from these very bright green edge lights that exist all over his character model. Which, again, this is someone making a conscious decision about how to present this character, how to make him look menacing in this moment by giving him these glowing eyes against a mostly shadowed face, against a mostly darkened body. And then once he rises, like, once he sort of slips out of this position, here his face is very much in darkness, slowly he begins to light up a little bit. Like, slowly he begins to reveal himself. Slowly you begin to see what it is he actually looks like. But even now, like, it's hard to make out his actual facial features, right? Like, he has a nose and mouth, and some eyes there, but, like, exactly what his face looks like, it's still a little unclear. So the animators, like the director and the visual artists, are denying us a lot of information about this guy to make him scarier. To make it like, oh, we can't quite see what's up with him. Like, what the heck is his deal? We can tell that he's obviously designed to be hot. Like, that's pretty clear just from looking at him. But they're making conscious decisions about how to present the character in order to get the feeling from him that we want. Which, again, here, like, even though he's done this dramatic stepping forward and he's raising his arm to, like, I demand that you return the thing to... Still, keeping him just out of our sight so that... all of a sudden, now we get to see him, so that this moment becomes the real reveal of who and what he is. And that comes down to his characterization as well. Viego here is not a man who can be reasoned with, which is essentially what Senna is trying to do here. Like, she's like, you don't belong in this world, you'll destroy the world if you keep doing what you're doing, would you please stop? Like, she's essentially trying to talk him out of it a little bit before raising her weapon. Because she realizes that there's no talking to this guy. And at this point, you see his expression change. You can see he begins to show his teeth. He begins to sort of bear himself. He drops his weight down low and does this ghost teleportation dash thing. Zoop! And now we get the full reveal of who he is, and who this character is someone who will choke a person if they don't give him exactly what he wants the moment that he demands it. This is the introduction to his character. Someone who seems calm and composed and in control, right up until the moment anyone or anything defies him, at which point he will immediately resort to rather brutal violence. So the storytelling of who Viego is as a character, like, just through the way that he's framed, just through the specifics of how the action plays out, there's a lot of storytelling going on for who he is, what he wants, and how he acts in order to get that. And I really like the effects on this ghost dash here, because what we basically have is, like, they generate the smoke effect over his body, then they dissolve his actual body, and then replace with this flash of green light for like 1, 2, 3, 4 frames. 4 frames is pretty much all we get. Zoosh. And then we get like this smear that resolves into like his body reappearing out of the smoke. You can see how he literally just appears from one frame to another. There's no slow assembly here. There doesn't need to be one. He just appears all of a sudden, which again is what sells like that, like that suddenness of like, oh yeah, no, like a person would probably not be able to react to that kind of thing. And now we get like the facial expression. And again, compare and contrast that with Tales of Runeterra shorts, where the expressions on the characters tend to be kind of exaggerated and cartoony. Even on human characters like Graves and Twisted Fate, like there tends to be a lot more obvious facial acting going on. Not that this guy is exactly being subtle right now, but like the little creases and lines in his forehead from like the eyebrows coming down and like him like you can tell that he's tensed up with anger here. The little curl of the lip as he reveals his teeth and pulls back. There's like, she is my world. Like that. And Senna like realizing, oh my god, this guy is an incel. It's like you can see the realization on Senna's face, right? Like it's not necessarily just that she's scared of him, it's that she's realizing exactly what kind of person that he is. That he's just told her, she is my world. I don't give a shit if I destroy all of Runeterra. I want what I want, and nobody is going to stop me from getting what I want, no matter how much that's going to hurt literally everyone else on the planet. Again, this is who Viego is, and Senna is realizing it. And again, this is not like a subtle expression as such, but it's a great deal subtler than, for example, Tristana's expression in the Yordle short from yesterday when, like, Graves fires his gun and she's shocked at that. That's a very different thing than from what's going on here, as we see Senna realize just the extent to which this guy is creepy as hell and a complete lunatic. And then, you know, the fading away. And that, by the way, is a lovely bit of subtle facial animation, because here she's looking at him and she's realizing, and then as he begins to extract the ruined queen from her, you can see how she, like, you can see her eyes lose focus. You can see the little twitches of the, actually, again, let me zoom in. I keep forgetting that I have a high resolution picture to work with this time, and we can actually go in real close and really see what's going on here. You see that? You see that little subtle twitch of the lower eyelid? And then, whoop, that there. All it is that. It goes from here to there, and all of a sudden she loses focus. All of a sudden you can see that like the clarity goes out of her sight. She's not looking at something anymore, and that's being sold even further with a slight, just a slight, you can see how the complete blackness of her pupils gets cast over with just a little bit of green here, just to indicate like that her stare is going blank. And then we get the lighting effects beginning to pour out, really showing that like she's completely, like she's losing consciousness, essentially, that she's losing focus. And that's like, especially like the little eyelid twitches, there's just at the bottom there, sort of indicating that there's a weird tension going on with her eyes, like where she's trying to maintain control and losing it. That's, oh, gorgeous, absolutely gorgeous. And then more lovely visual effects. And by the way, credit to the visual effects artists here. Like I said, the smoke and the particle effects are probably like something you tell the computer generate X amount, like X number of particles here and stuff, but there's still a VFX animator who has to like manage, even if you're using like an algorithm to say, okay, so create like, have the particles sort of orbit this central spot around here. There's still an animator who has to make decisions about exactly how that presents, manage exactly how those algorithms play out, and like manage stuff like how these tendrils of blackness sort of curl in all around the light orb at the front, as though they're like, you can kind of see how like the black mist is almost like it's seeking a way in. Like it's like tentacles probing for a way to grab this thing they wanted because it's life force. And that's just like props to the VFX animators, because that's like, they did a really damn good job at this. And again, some lovely subtle facial acting. Lucian goes from blasting monsters with his gun, here's his killer face, to... And all it is, it's just that. it's that little raise of the eyebrows, opening up the eyes just a little bit more, and he goes from anger to concern and shock. And again, like, the VFX artists doing an absolutely brilliant job, because again, all of this flow, like, look at the visual flow of all the smoke here, right? We have this central light pillar coming up from the Ruined King and Senna, moving into the sky. So we have this flow of smoke moving upwards, and look how everything else in the scene conforms to enhance that. Like, you have all this smoke from the ground, you can see that sort of being pulled up in the wake, essentially by convection. And you can see how all the, like, the smoke out on the sides here and all of that is rising commensurate to that rising power. So the whole scene has this lifting feeling to it, really sort of giving you the sense of, oh, tremendous power is being unleashed here. Which again, some VFX artist and a director had to make some conscious decisions about making that happen. It doesn't happen automatically. As the Immortal Bastion bursts out into smoke and devils, and I'm gonna have some theories about what exactly is going on here, sort of in terms of lore mechanics, in a later video, but suffice it to say that the Immortal Bastion especially has some pre-existing connections to, like, the undead and undead warlords who want to take over the world. Like, that's a thing that the Immortal Bastion is familiar with through Mordekaiser. Whether or not there's a Mordekaiser connection here, and I do have to wonder, like, what does Mordekaiser think about this other King of Death showing up and doing, like, trying to take over the world with an undead army? That's his thing. Like, he's basically stealing Mordekaiser's whole shtick. Is he just gonna sit there and take it? Is he just gonna, like, the guy showed up to the party wearing the same dress, dude. You should at least say something. Someone has to change, surely. Anyway, we cut to my girl Samira, hanging out, just being her, being cool, being too cool for whatever the hell it is Darius is doing with the Trifarian Legion back here, probably doing some kind of inspiring speech to them about why it's good to die for an empire or something, which it isn't, but we'll let him have it. We'll let him have it, the poor boy. I love Samira's character design. I've talked about that in the What's the Deal video already, but she's like, yeah, if you're gonna have, like, the sexy hot lady with a sword thing, then Samira is just such a good damn way to do it. And notice, again, the physical staging of the scene, because knowing absolutely nothing else about these characters, who would you, like, take a look at them and try and see, okay, imagine what would your first impression of them be if this was the first image you saw of Samira and Darius ever. If you'd never met them before, you didn't know anything about them, what would your assumption be about who she is relative to him? And, like, what kind of relationship she has to her environment? Because take a look at this. That wall right there. Samira, in the image, first of all, she's lit differently than the other characters. Like, all the Trifarian Legion back here are mostly black. Like, they're mostly in shadow, rather. And they are lit with, like, this bright white edge lighting that's sort of desaturated, and they look kind of colorless over there. Like, Darius has this bright red cloak, and there's, like, this orange fire in the background. But mostly, this is pretty desaturated. It's pretty colorless. There's not a lot going on here. By contrast, over here, within the confines of this stack of crates in this wall, Samira is lit with very warm, bright light. Like, she's very colorful. You can see the gold and the red, and you can see, like, the color of her skin. She's like someone who looks like she has the hot breath of life in her. So just visually, you can instantly tell that she is not of the same kind as they, because she doesn't look anything like them, because she's lit differently from them, and most importantly, she's separated in the frame by a literal wall between her and them. Now, she's not so apart from them that she's not part of the same city. Like, you can tell, okay, she's in more or less the same space, but she's apart from them in the sense that she's not a part of the rank and file. She's not one of the faceless soldiers. This one is unique. This one does things her own way. She's special somehow. And you don't know, like, any specifics about her, but you have some idea of, okay, this is who she is relative to them. By the same token, look at Darius. Again, the soldiers themselves, mostly in shadow, mostly like blacks going on. Like, they have these red loincloths hanging down the front of them, but you can't really see the red color at all because they're so in shadow and desaturated. Darius, by contrast, you can see the color of his skin, you can see the bright red of his cloak, so, like, he's much more associated with these soldiers. He's physically closer to them, he's in the same space, but he's also clearly apart from them. He looks different, he's more colorful. He's clearly a different character. It's essentially a version of the same exercise, you know, spot the anime protagonist, right? Like when you get an anime and you see a classroom and there's like one dude with brightly colored hair and like not wearing a school uniform sitting in the back of the classroom, you're like, oh yeah, no, yeah, there's the protagonist. He's the only guy who looks that particularly weird. This is essentially the same game we're playing, except with slightly subtler tools. Spot the protagonists in this image, right? So Samira is apart from Darius, like you can tell that she's different from him. He's more associated with them, but still not the same kind of person that they are. Like he's not quite the same caliber of warrior that they are. He's much more, he stands out much more. All of that from just, what is this, like 1, 2 seconds, 2, 3, yeah, 3 or 4 seconds of introduction. And we kind of get that, right? Like we kind of understand, okay. And then the next thing, here's some character animation. Samira spots what's happening to the Immortal Bastion, which she's like naturally concerned about that. And we get this focus pull, where the focus goes from Samira in the foreground here. She becomes blurred, and then the focus shifts in on Darius, noticing that Samira is noticing something. I don't know how nobody else in the scene has realized what's happening yet, but I guess Samira has like a better perception skill check. Here, Samira looks pretty big in frame, right? But look at the way the Immortal Bastion is framed. It looks like a mountain, essentially, compared to her. So you get this sense of threat and scope. Not quite as bad as when Senna and Lucian were alone on the cliffside and a little bit and tiny and walking into the thing, but that happens here. Now, Samira gets to be itty-bitty and tiny in the screen as these things rush towards her. And that's what gives you the sense of danger, right? Like, you can see that she's tiny in the screen, and then these things come in, and they're clearly important. They're lit up. Like, what are they going to do? They're going to do something to her. This is dangerous. There's a threat, which is why Darius knocks her out of the way and tries to block them. Swap the scene again. Now we are in the Placidium of Navori, maybe? I don't remember where Karma's monastery is, but we're in Karma's monastery. We are in Ionia. We have made a quite substantial transition in scene from one frame, from one scene to the next. So how do we communicate that we are now in a completely different space? Well, look at the colors of Noxus. We have the gray and brown of the rock. We have the red of the banners, the steel gray sky. Red and black are sort of the order of the day when it comes to the colors of the characters that we're seeing. Some orange fire as well. Now, once we get to Karma, on the other hand, oh, all of a sudden the color grading has changed completely. Everything has sort of this pink, orangey light draped all over it. Like it's almost like sunset lighting, isn't it? We have these green plants and like bright pink flowers, and we have a completely different architecture. Noxus is all boxes and straight lines. Like you can even see it like in the tiling of the floors, and like everything here is like straight lines, boxes. It's very rigid, it's very harsh, it's very hard lines. And then as we swap to Ionia, everything here is curved. Everything here is round. Everything here seems to be composed of circles over and over again. We have this circle where Karma is fighting the undead. We have the circle of this canopy. We have the circles in the canopy. And even the swirling of the black mist describes a spiraling circle moving in on Karma herself. So like just the shape language here is what helps us identify immediately, like without any pause, without being confused, without taking a second to get our bearings, we understand, oh, okay, this is a completely different place. Like this is not even remotely the same kind of place at all. We need to understand this as a completely separate space in the world, and perhaps even a separate space and time, except of course the same action is happening here. And can I just say, I appreciate Karma's nose in this shot. I don't know if you know how fucking rare it is, but it is incredibly rare to see like sexy female heroes, especially in fantasy media, who have a nose that curves that way. The standard nose is the landing strip nose, like that little, I can never remember the difference between concave and convex, but the one that curves inwards and then out like that, that's sort of the Disney Frozen nose, the tangled nose. That's the standard fantasy lady nose, and there's all the fantasy ladies all over the place all of the time, and nobody ever bothers to do anything else. It's just nice to see Karma and Samira have noses that curve a little bit outwards instead. It's a rare thing, it's a small thing, it's something I personally appreciate, that like that they just try to make faces different sometimes. It's a nice thing. So, you know, good on them. Thank you for doing that. That's a good thing, because it makes her slightly more identifiable character, especially when her entire body and her body type is completely fucking identical to like 150 other goddamn champions in League of Legends. But anyway, that's a different discussion. So, Karma versus these things, and again, we have a switch in scene. Now we're looking at Demacia, and again, look at the difference in light. We have blue skies here. We have these, like, we have sort of some of the same sort of blocky architecture as Noxus, but look at all these domed structures. Look at all these statues everywhere. Look at the bright white of the walls here compared to the darkness of Noxus. Look at the golden cornfields that these undead are rushing across. Again, the staging, the color, the way that buildings and environments are designed does the job of telling us that no. Think of this as a completely different space. And then we get my girl Poppy. My girl Poppy! Woohoo! Doing a bit of bullet time there as she unleashes her ult on these poor idiots who should have known better and to mess with a Yordle. Like, we saw that in the Yordle anime shot. Don't mess with Yordles. And I do like this tracking shot. Like, it's a tracking shot where the camera, like, adding to the speed, the camera is really low to the ground, which always makes all speed seem faster. And we get introduced to the hammer first. Not Poppy herself, just the hammer first. And then her tiny little Yordle legs follow. And, like, you have this tracking shot really accentuating the speed of just how quickly she moves. And then we get the actual reveal of her, which is here, more or less. As we get this bullet time shot where she just kind of hangs in the air, seemingly unaffected by gravity. This is bullet time rather than coyote time, because what's going on here is we have this slow-mo effect where everything's slowing down substantially. And then as she reaches, like, the peak of her jump, we get, all of a sudden, time speeds up again. Woof! So you get this feeling of like everything slows down, Matrix effects, camera swings around. And that is, from a visual storytelling perspective, it does two things. First of all, it heightens the impact of what Poppy is about to do. Like, as visual language goes, at this point, we universally understand that when the camera slows down for a bit right before an action is about to happen, that means that action is a big action. Like, oh, something big is going to happen here. Whatever this is, it's powerful. Something big is going to happen. There's going to be a huge impact, and we're getting more anticipation for it. We're having this slow build up to like 5, 4, 3, 2, 1, and gadoosh. Right? That's the number one thing. The number two thing is that it gives us time to actually get a look at Poppy and her gorgeous braids. Man, I hope they update the in-game character model to have those. Does she have braids on the in-game character? I don't think she does. Does she? It's been a long time since I looked at Poppy in-game. Oh well. To actually give us the reveal of Poppy as a character, like to let us see, okay, this is a tiny blue person who's little, but she has this big hammer and there's this magical effect thing going on it, and she whacks it into the ground and she kicks those guys' ass. Okay, she's a hero. That's pretty obvious. And there's a subtler thing going on as well, which is just the good character design on the part of Poppy, which is that she has like blue skin, which aligns her with the blue of the sky and the blue of the roofs of Demacia. She has earth tones and earth colors on her character, which is like, again, from a character design perspective, a character who's all dressed in earth colors and earth tones, like, they tend to look more friendly than characters who are dressed in, for example, black and white. Look at Star Wars, for example, compare and contrast, like, this is one of my favorite examples, but compare and contrast the rebels in Star Wars with the stormtroopers, and you see this kind of color design being used explicitly to code good guys and bad guys. But also, like, the gold of the hammer and the hair also aligns with Demacian aesthetics, which is just a good character design. Like, there's not that much gold in this version of Demacia that we see, but gold is one of the primary colors of Demacia as well. So from a character design perspective, Poppy is just really well designed to look like a Demacian champion. And I do enjoy, like, again, because we had the Yordle short yesterday, we might as well compare and contrast there as well. Here you can really see, like, in the most explicit terms possible, the difference in aesthetic approach between Tales of Runeterra and the Ruination short. Because Tales of Runeterra, Yordles don't look like this. They don't have these little sort of fuzzy mottled faces where you can really see that soft fur. I want to pet her. Like, if you scratch that nose, is it like scratching the nose of a cat? Anyway, that's a different conversation. But especially in the hair. Poppy's hair looks almost kind of distressingly realistic. Like, it's almost like it's a little too realistic, isn't it? Makes her look a little bit like a doll, at least when you slow down, like when you look at shots completely slowed down. It's very, very highly realistic hair. Compare and contrast that with the way that the Tales of Runeterra short yordles are presented, where the hair is much more of sort of a unified, much more of an anime aesthetic of hair, really, where it's much more of a painted thing. Here you get the sense of each goddamn individual strand of her frickin' eyelashes. In fact, let's zoom in on that for a second. Each individual goddamn strand of her eyelashes is animated. You want a picture of the difference between the Tales of Runeterra shorts and this one in terms of how they approach realism? That's the one you got. Individually rendered eyelashes. There you frickin' go. And I think, like, personally, I think it's cool. Like, I really like seeing Poppy and yordles in general rendered more realistically to give us more of a sense of, like, how would these characters look if they were actually real. And she does look like some kind of fairy creature, doesn't she? Again, I think the hair looks a little too human in some ways. Like, I don't know what you would do. Like, she is blonde. Like, that's just what Poppy is, but I don't know. Maybe it could be more bristly. Maybe it could be more like animal fur or something. I don't know. That's a difficult thing to solve. That's a really difficult thing to solve. Because right now it looks a little bit like a wig. Because of the contrast between her blue fur and the golden hair. I don't know. But my god, like, look at the scales and her armor. Like, this is an exquisitely rendered model. And again, the lighting in this scene is excellent because, like, everyone else in the scene, all the people running in the background, they're all in shadow. Like, all of them, completely in shadow. Mostly they're just black silhouettes out of focus in the background. Poppy, on the other hand, bright sunlight bursting onto her face, fully illuminating her features and her bright golden hair, clearly marking her out as the hero here. Like, imagine if she had been introduced in the same way that the Ruined King was introduced, like, all in shadow, with barely any of her face visible kind of thing. Very different feeling. Here, we instantly see that this is the hero of the story, as she does the zoom. And I really like this zoom as well. Because, like, she's just smashed up these rocks, right? And she's like, oh, those rocks are in the way. Boom! Just like, doesn't care. It's fucking debris. Fuck that shit. Boom! We're just smashing through everything. It's good. It's really good. And we're doing the same kind of movement aesthetic that we did with the Ruined King. Remember how with the Ruined King is there's this brief build-up as he, like, drops his body weight and then becomes a wraith, and then, phew, all of a sudden he's just there? Same thing happens with Poppy here. You can see, like, she does this wind-up where she pulls out her shield. You can see, like, she changes her body weight, drops down on one knee, like she's a sprinter getting ready to run, and then, boom, she just disappears. She disappears into motion blur and this bright lighting effect, and then it's just like, and the camera follows suit. Like, the camera follows suit, not just tracking her, but you can see how the entire space of the camera's field of view, there's just motion blur all over the goddamn thing, really communicating just the scale of speed that we're working with. You can see how the field of vision is even distorting as we dash through the scene with her. And then that's used as a transition point to get us back to Darius, who's holding back these, whatever the hell they are, and we figure out what it was those tendrils were trying to do to poor Samira. And what we get here is two bits of visual storytelling. First, the glowing white eyes, which we first saw on Viego. We first saw these bright glowing eyes on the Ruined King, and then we get the crown, which again is something that you will have spotted when we were looking at the Ruined King. Let's see if we can get a close-up. You get same shapes, same bright white eyes. So, for the observant person, there's a visual obvious connection, if I can find it, between, okay, so clearly Mr. Weird incel guy, same thing going on here. So there's some kind of possession thing going on. So even without being told, you understand, okay, this is some kind of mind control. Like, we've seen this kind of thing before. We've got mind control going on. And again, we cut back to Ionia, and once again, curves, circles, and even, like, the tendrils of darkness that are going to spiral in on poor Karma describe a spiral or a circle to really show, like, to really maintain that visual aesthetic of the scene, which is also reflected in the circling jade dragons that spin behind poor Karma, as dear Mr. Ruined King tries to do the same thing again with his little possession thing, which fortunately doesn't work on Karma, but we don't know that yet. In the storytelling of this thing, we have this 3-act structure. Well, maybe not 3 acts, but we have this sort of, this clear delineation of structures. We have a moment of peace before the start where Lucian and Senna are just hanging out. She's giving him shit for not maintaining his guns properly. He's like, haha, I love you, my wife. I love you so much. I'm never gonna let anyone hurt you ever. I have a deep emotional complex about your safety. But they're just kind of hanging out and talking and talking shit as a shadow slowly moves up on Lucian. Like, you can literally see the shadow coming in over him here as the looming threat comes in. Then we have the reveal of the threat. Like, as Senna gets the glowy eyes and the message about, oh god, the black mist is coming. Then we get the first bit of action, as Lucian and Senna, like, charge in, and Lucian starts blasting these things to pieces. Confrontation with the bad guy. And then we have the first climax, which is when Viego grabs Senna, reclaims at least part of the spirit of his wife, and unleashes the Ruination. That's the first emotional climax. Then we get a second set of setups, where we see, like, Samira and Darius spotting what's going on. We see Karma in full combat with these undead monstrosities. And then we get the setup of Demacia, where Poppy is doing some fighting against the undead. Okay, cool. And then we get Darius getting possessed, Karma getting possessed, Lucian, like, in a pretty desperate battle with these undead bastards. If my scrolling would please behave properly, thank you. And Samira doing exactly the same thing. And in fact, there's a lovely consonance between the two of them, because what happens, like, I really like the transition from Lucian fighting the undead to Samira fighting the undead, because what happens is Lucian blasts this guy in the gut. That's a really nice maneuver. Very John Wick. And then points out, blasts this guy. And then right as he does that, we cut to Samira doing exactly the same thing. Like, she's, well, it's not blasting it, but she's, like, exploding an undead. And then, boom. So, like, there's this visual action continuity between the two of them. They're doing the same action. They're both of them fighting the same threat. Which, again, visual storytelling, pretty well done. As all of a sudden, Samira has to deal with something that's potentially even worse. And these are the all is lost moments, right? Like, these are the lowest points of our heroes, where they are most in peril and most under threat. Same thing goes for Poppy here, who's fighting pretty much alone as the gates come down behind her against these undead bastards, which she can probably handle because she's pretty damn good at this stuff. But then, like, we get multiple of them coming at her, which is like a perilous situation to be in when, oh, hello, Vayne is here, and she's going to fucking murder Poppy for being a magical creature. That one's never really explained, because Vayne hates all magic, all of it. She hates the undead, she hates demons, she hates mages, she hates everything that is magical or, like, unnatural, very large air quotes. Hates it, wants it all dead, wants to kill it on sight. She sees Yordles, she sees Poppy, and apparently decides that, like, okay, we're cool with her now, I guess, even though her entire life quest has been all about murdering the... Okay, like, but apparently she's cool with Yordles, or maybe she doesn't see that Poppy is a Yordle. Who knows? It's the whole Yordle situation about who knows and who doesn't know that they're real is frankly not very well explained in the League of Legends universe. I'll let it go for now. But anyway, Vayne and Poppy look at each other, and then Poppy swings her hammer and is like, oh, she's gonna attack the lady. Except, of course, boom! She's attacking the undead, because poor Poppy is a very polite person who would never attack a lady like that. Then they look at each other, they get this little sort of badass recognizing badass, and then it's like, back to fighting. So we got the all is lost moment, and then we got sort of the first, like, the first sign of hope, at least for Poppy, that, like, okay, now she has an ally, she's not fighting alone anymore, they can hold off this horde together. Then we come back here. This is the all is lost moment for Samira and Lucian. For Senna and Lucian. God damn it, I'm bad with names. And here's Samira's all is lost moment when the darkness is encroaching. Like, you can literally see in the shot right here how the darkness is closing in and sort of becoming overwhelming as she's trying to fight off Darius. Boom, and he knocks her down. Here's the all is lost moment for Karma, and then again, emotional climax as she breaks free of the control, which is probably something she can do because she is literally imbued with some of the most powerful spirits in all of Ionia, which she demonstrates beautifully by doing a thing she definitely can't do in-game. I would like that to be her ultimate Riot, please, instead of that dumb mantra thing. Like, give her, like, double Jade Dragons just fucking clearing. That would be cool. As Lucian takes action, all is lost moment averted. We get an emotional climax. Senna is saved from whatever the hell the Ruined King is doing to her. He is distracted. And because of that, we see all of this, like all these very concrete, like you can see these very sharp tendrils of smoke and darkness all like flowing up in a very unified, specified direction. They begin to collapse into nothingness. Like a sand castle falling apart, basically. As Senna gets shot in, I do like the way he tumbles. It's like, ha ha ha, I have won, I am so cool, I am the Ruined King, I'm like... And the way he tumbles like a ragdoll, like... It's a really good tumble. It undercuts him really nicely, because it just looks so silly. Like, he looks like such an idiot. So Senna gets her own back, which again, from a visual storytelling perspective, I think they did that just so that Senna wouldn't be a damsel in distress for the whole thing, which is kind of the thing that, like, that was at risk of happening, is like, Senna's like, yeah, I'm gonna fight the darkness, and then she immediately just gets grabbed by him and doesn't get a chance to fight back at all, and then Lucian has to save her. I think they put this moment in just to make sure that they weren't accidentally presenting Senna as defenseless. As she gets her own back on the dumb idiot. And he's just basically like she's trying to distract him from Isolde, basically, which she manages to do successfully as he calls upon the Blade of the Ruined King, which is this part. This is the Blade of the Ruined King that you can buy in-game. The pommel and the hilt, this ridiculously penis-compensating contraption that he's got going on here, that's all Viego himself, though. Which, again, as a character design element, I feel like it represents his personality pretty well because it's so fucking extra. Like, it's just so much more than it needs to be, which is very much Viego himself. He's like, he's an extra boy. Like, he's a bit much. On every possible axis, he's a bit much. As Senna is down, they're being encroached upon by, like, demons from all sides. Lucian has to make some kind of decision. And look at the color design of this scene. I really freaking loved this the first time I saw it. We have the colors of the Ruined King, which is like the colors of the Shadow Isles, like the black smoke and the sort of the bright teal and blue and all the coldness, just encroaching in from all sides as Viego himself makes the move towards Senna. But here in the center, the spirit of the Ruined Queen and Senna herself, and the bright light of life, just red and orange, like the hot breath of life, the color of a sunset, glowing through just a little bit, highlighting the center, like literally highlighting. You can see there's essentially a spotlight on Senna here in the middle, highlighting the choice that Lucian has to make between fighting all of this or saving that. Specifically this. He should probably have tried to save that as well, but specifically this. So the visual storytelling here is aiding the character storytelling really, really well. Like, we can see the binary choice that he has to make here. Save her, fight them. You can't do both. Make a decision. Senna is essentially pleading with him, would you please fight the Ruined King? Because that's more important. Like, save Isolde, fight the Ruined King. Because she's a self-sacrificing lady. And Lucian, with all of his many emotional issues about his wife being dead and tortured for many, many years, which, like, to be fair, is understandable, makes a somewhat different decision, which Senna realizes as they go over the cliff is like, oh no, he left her behind, and splash into the water. Anyway, the Ruined King gets what he wants, but one thing to notice in terms of the visual storytelling here, how does he act once, like, this is ostensibly the soul of his queen, the one thing that he cares about more than anything else in the known universe, except when he absorbs her, that's it. That's all his reaction. He absorbs her and then he walks away. And the feeling I get from that is that this is not his final triumph. Like, this is not, he has not recovered his wife yet. He's not fully recovered who she is. This is part one of his plan. This is Thanos after getting, like, the first few Infinity Gems and being satisfied and walking off. It's not Thanos with the gauntlet getting ready to snap yet, essentially. Like, that's more a thing of satisfaction of, like, okay, part one is done. I'm gonna get exactly what I want. And because I'm getting what I want, I'm gonna stop throwing my stupid fucking tantrum, which is when the Ruination stops happening elsewhere in Runeterra, as we get to the next part where everybody's sort of recovering from what happened. It's like, Viego has gotten what he wanted, his temper tantrum is over, and now the sigil of the Light Seekers, or the Light Sentinels, closes us out as the various characters begin to recover and sort of try and process what the hell just happened to them. Specifically, Senna is like, You dumb moron, you left her behind. Like, she's the one thing that he wanted and you just let him have it. It's like, God damn it. Well, she's not quite like that. She's like, we have to go back for her. And you can see that in her facial expression again. Again, that facial acting is just really, really good. It's concern. Like, she's like, shit, we have to go back for her. She wants to save this poor soul that she has carried inside her for a long time. And Lucian is like, no. Like, no, we're not doing that alone. That's a bad idea. We need allies. Who might those allies be, you ask? Well, the short is going to show us. Here's Samira. It's like, hey, you're not trying to kill me anymore. That's cool. And Darius and Noxus. Here is Karma in Ionia, sort of distressed by what just happened. Like, I must imagine it must be especially shocking for her, because, like, at least in Noxus, they know that used to be Mordekaiser's immortal bastard. Like, maybe they have some idea, like, okay, maybe there's some dangerous magic here somewhere that we need to be prepared for. Karma was just, like, hanging out and vibing. She was just doing meditation shit in Ionia, and then all of a sudden, undead invasion just happens. Like, she must be so fucking confused right now. It's like, the fuck? Like, I was just sitting here, and then you come along, and you attack me, and you just fuck off. What the hell? That must be so confusing. And then we have Vayne and Poppy discovering, at least as far as I can tell, I think this is the thing that unleashed, this is the source of that light beam that shot into the sky and unleashed the undead. I think this is some artifact or something that the Light Sentinels have sealed away beneath their sigil in the ground or something along those lines. Who knows? It's all plot set up for, like, this is the post-credit scene, essentially. The kind of thing you'd get after a Marvel movie teasing what's going to be happening in the next Marvel movie or the next Avengers film, or what the hell ever. Just setting up that this sigil is important and something's going to be happening about that matters somehow. So remember what this thing looks like. Bye. And that's the end of the animated short. Oh boy, how long is this gonna be, this video? I don't even know, because I'm recording it in multiple takes, so it could be 2 hours for all I know. Probably not, but it's quite good. Like, it's a lot of really, really high quality. Like, just freaking look at Lucian's coat here. Like, look at all... This is something I love in character design, something League of Legends... I've criticized League of Legends for it before, that characters in the game are never dirty. Like, they're never actually scuffed up and dirty. They never really look like they don't have scars, they don't have battle damage, they don't have anything. They just look physically perfect, like they've never gone through a hard day's work in their lives. Look at Lucian's coat here, though. Like, look at all the scuffs and scrapes. Look at the dirt coming. Like, he just hasn't washed this thing in, like, 6 months. It must stink to high heaven or whatever. I really like that. I like that you can see the scars from undead creatures that have been clawing at him. Like, you can see the wear and tear of the life that he leads on his clothes, which is such a lovely thing. Like, this is just good character design. Like, it's just good character design to have a character's life show in the kind of clothes that they wear. And by the way, as a point of contrast, look at Senna's outfit. She hasn't been fighting undead for a while. Like, she hasn't been in the game of like, getting clawed and beaten up by monstrosities for a bit. She's been going through some other shit. Like, she hasn't had it easy or anything, but you can tell by Senna, it's like, oh, she's somewhat cleaner and better maintained because she hasn't been fighting through hell and high water for the last 10 years trying to save her husband from a lantern. It's the other way around. So she's a little bit cleaner, she's a little bit more well-maintained, as it were. And that's a nice contrast between them, is that Lucian is all kind of worn ragged, and he looks a little bit exhausted just from the way that his coat looks. He looks like he's taking a lot of damage. Like he's a little... Like he could use some tender loving care, basically, whereas Senna, by contrast, looks so much more clean and composed and undamaged in a lot of ways, even though arguably Senna is the one between them who has taken a lot more damage over the years. It's just a good point of character contrast, like that Lucian is the one who's all worn out and who's not really in the mood to try and fight the entire Shadow Isles all by himself, and who's going to caution Senna, hey, like, Senna, maybe we can't just fight that guy alone, maybe we need some allies. The character design is doing some of the work of establishing that contrast between them, and I think it's really good. I really like it. Anyway, good animated short, damn high production values. Probably we won't be seeing a lot of those unless Riot has been planning to make them for a while, because producing something like this takes a good long while. I enjoyed it. We're going to have a discussion video about all of the lore theories and what might be coming next. Like, oh, this shot, like, again, what I was talking about. Look at this. Like, you can just see Like, it's not that there's no scuffs or anything, like, not that this doesn't look like stuff that's been through some shit, but look at Lucian, just how ragged he looks compared to her. It's so good. Like, even his white coat is, like, way darker than her white coat. It's good. It's really good. It's the lighting does that as well. Right, if you enjoyed this video with my long ramble, I'm gonna stop now before I go off on another tangent. You can hit the like, comment, and subscribe buttons down below. That's very helpful because it tells the algorithm, hey, this video was a video that was like, okay, it was decent, like, other people should be allowed to see that too, I guess, and the algorithm will go, oh, okay, some people think this video is worth watching, I guess I'll show it to other people. So if you want to help out a YouTuber, whether it's me or someone else, clicking those buttons is actually a thing that does something. I also have a Patreon, I have a merchandise store, I have a tip jar. Oh yes, this channel is fully monetized, believe you me, because that's how I that's how I pay my rent these days. And if you want to help me do that, I'd be very grateful for the help. But if you don't want to, or you can't, because of all of the everything that's happening, don't worry about it. It's completely okay. The argument I do make at the end of my videos, though, is I try to argue generally that if there's online content that you enjoy, especially if it's made by niche content creators or smaller creators who don't have that much of an audience, try when you can to support it directly with, like, direct contributions of anything you can whenever you can, because that $1 donation is quite literally the same as thousands of views on a video. It makes so much more of a difference than you think. And outside of that... Oh, right, no, wait, I was about to end the video, but I need to self-promote some more, because, you know, never get tired of that on YouTube.com. I have a second channel. I play video games, they do Let's Plays and stuff over there. I've got a bunch of Bloodborne, Dark Souls footage that's up on there. I've been playing through the Final Fantasy games. We're playing through Hades currently. There's some Breath of the Wild. There's lots of stuff. If you want to see some of that, like, comment, subscribe on that videos over there as well. Also, that would be good. Oh, it knocked my microphone. That would be good as well. I would appreciate it. And outside of that, thank you very much for watching. Please remember to wear a mask and wash your hands. And once the vaccine comes, I beg of you, please take it and make your parents do the same. No matter what kind of stupid Facebook pages they've been looking at, please, because I want to go outside soon. I want to go out. I don't want to be inside anymore. And try to act in solidarity when you can with those who are working hard to make the world a better place.